The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.
And back in my part of the world this week for the Photowalk, it was fantastic. Walking with Bill Ward last week, the actor, stage, screen, television, and a phenomenal photographer. And we've really just scratched the surface with the projects that he's been working on, in that we concentrated upon the intentional camera movements. I have a feeling that may come up in a letter shortly, spoiler alert, and a bit about his photography of the stages of the UK, and then of course his acting. So I suspect there'll be a return visit at some stage. Let me just get an opening picture. Pups, hold on a mo. I've got Barney back with me. Do you remember last week we invented essentially a new photographic phrase? Yes, blur, being a reference to weather and a kind of like a nothingy sky day. And I've got a blur day today. I brought out a different camera this week. Hold on, pups. Barney's going to have to be a bit more... Stop pulling. You're going to have to be a bit more patient with me today. I'm using the X Pro 1 with my vintage lens on it, which is a manual focus. Well, it's manual everything. Let's just get some blur for you. Hold on, pups. That's good. He's sat down. He's waiting patiently. Right, what do we have? Shutter speed 250th, f5.6 ISO. I'm at 640. That could probably come down, to be honest, but let's just get a sketchbook image to start today's show. 1, 2, there we go. All right, Barney, he's pulling the lead. Come on, we got places to go. This is a very muddy route. I've chosen the muddiest possible footpath or towpath next to a canal I could possibly find. I thought, let's go somewhere not too muddy for Barnes today, because he ends up looking like a mop. And I met a dog walker a moment ago coming the other way. He said, it's just about to become more muddy. I thought, what, than this? Are you sure? Right, whilst I appreciate the round ball of football or soccer is not everybody's sport, and the World Cup is not necessarily something everybody is following, either down to it not being the right shaped ball or another reason, but sport and sports photography and the adventures that brings is the theme of my guest today. We don't do too much on sports photography, so I thought we'd use the excuse, like you need one, of the World Cup, and I'll come to my guest in a moment, but I also spied on our sponsors blog in mpb.com's original content section a fascinating insight into being a World Cup photographer at this event. An up-to-date diary by Berlin-based Rio Wolkol, who goes behind the lens and behind the scenes in Qatar, documenting his day-to-day photography at international football's, well, it's fair to say, biggest event. For me, it's a fascinating insight into how you can even get there as a freelancer. There are hoops upon hoops to jump through, and he talks about a book series that financed his trip. And I like that about photographers who have to invent a way to enable them to cover ground, as it were, to get to events, to get to parts and places of the world that they otherwise couldn't afford to, because they don't have necessarily a commission or a pot of money from a newspaper. And he does talk about kit, and there's also the logistics of working effectively in the desert. The desert, a word where, well, photography doesn't mix well with deserts. There's sand and there's wind, usually. Not great, particularly for digital sensors. So yeah, it's a piece that he's written. It's a blog piece that's being updated regularly on the mpb.com website, and I'll link to it in the show notes today on the web page that accompanies this particular show. And my thanks to mpb.com, who are our sponsor. The number one people to go to if you're buying, selling or trading quality used camera kit online. And whilst Rio is based in Berlin, so is mpb.com with their European HQ. So we have Brighton in the UK, we have Berlin in Europe, we have Brooklyn handling the business in the States. And if you're looking for new to you kit to go and make your pictures and your adventures, go to mpb.com. And I'll link to them on the website, of course, today as well. Talking of adventures, seamless, Neil, seamless. I want you to meet Derek Katani, a World Cup legend with a camera, who aged 19 landed a job with England's Football Association as a film librarian. He had no idea at the time of how in 1966 he was effectively walking into a job that was going to change his life forever.
Today on the Photowalk.
The noise, the crowd participation was such that you were completely enveloped in this sound of people screaming and shouting and waving and enjoying themselves, you know.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today my guest is Derek Catani, who'll be sharing stories about lions. Yes, 3 lions, as in the badge on the white jerseys worn by England, though don't go hiding behind your sofa at this point, fearful that this is going to be one of those Englishman talks incessantly about the only team his time won the World Cup, because it's a story of happenstance, which is a word you'll hear at least 3 times today, and a story about an actual lion. A lion called Christian, bought in a shop in London and released back into the wilds of Africa.
And they said, what do you do? And I said, photographer, da-da-da. And they said, well, we're looking for a photographer to do some pictures for us. And I went, well, okay, what's it all about? They said, we've just bought a lion from Harrods. And I went, yeah, joking.
Also, inspirational thoughts from Gareth Ewan-Jones on the simplicity of photographic ideas. Bill Ward from last week on ICM, and Imran Nouri on courage, I suppose. It's a unique and special kind of photography show. Unique because it's made by your letters that you send in about what making pictures means to you, and special because we get to spend time together making our photos while the letters and the guests inspire with thoughts about photography and life. Whatever you photograph with, a pro-grade camera, a humble smartphone, it's a show about how making pictures has us feel, what it does for us and others around us. And with 6.6 billion people on this planet of ours able to make photographs with something, we are not walking alone. In the mailbag today, having a go at waving cameras around and creating art from the blur that occurs. Making pictures that helps you forget about the dentist drill. Is there such a thing that would be that powerful? Free online tools to help you squish your pictures ready for using on a blog. That sounds a bit like tech, Neil. FIFA yellow card to you there. The snows have arrived in Calgary, and in another part of Canada land, civil unrest has one of our photo walkers take his camera out for the first time. The simplicity of photo projects, uncomplicating your life, and the walks you've been making from our Facebook group. So much to talk about today. So, shall we walk then? Checklist out. Coffee, Garibaldi's packed? Check. Boots on and laced? Or check. Spare batteries? Check. A geolocation app activated if you are map logging your pictures. I promise I will think of a snappier way to say that. Check. Memory cards or spare film? Check. Earbuds in? Check. Lens caps off. Let's walk. If you're a Photowalk listener of a Friday, you'll have heard me mention the assignments show of a Monday. Our short show at the start of a working week with, what was that? Was that the heron? Oh, Barnes, was it? He just saw a heron a moment ago. I thought that was it. He was very interested in that. The heron was the other side of the water that I'm facing here. I thought, hang on, that's a cold swim. I don't fancy that very much. I don't think it's there, Barnes. I think it's gone. Beautiful, aren't they, herons? They really are. Brought totally the wrong camera today if I want to capture anything like that. Or to photograph. Capture. We decided capture wasn't a word that we wanted to use about photography. It was a very aggressive word, wasn't it? It's difficult trying to find lots of different words without saying make all the time. Where were we? Oh yes, the assignment show. It's a way on a Monday to think about, well, other ideas. Oh, there it is, Barnes. There it is. Beautiful, majestic. Oh, can you hear it in the background? Oh, wonderful. I will get to this assignments show. It's a way to think about your picture making, perhaps give you some different ideas, some challenges at the start of a week. That's what we do on a Monday. Maybe some styles of photography that you've not tried before. Anyway, they jump between simple challenges and certainly the more involved, so something for every single level. Anyway, we'll start the show talking about one of the main topics of last week's walk, which was also the most recent assignment episode, which was making photographs that have intentional camera movement. Intentional camera what, Neil? Intentional camera movement. Where with your camera, you just move it slightly. You could zoom in and out with the lens, or you move the whole body of your camera just very slightly as you're making a photograph. Anyway, we'll come to that a little bit more in a moment, but that's what ICM, intentional camera movement, is all about. And here are a couple of letters from Sarah Moorcroft that have something to do with last week's episode. Hello, Sarah. How are you? It's good to hear from you. Thank you for your letter. Hello, Neil. Thank you for 2 fabulous episodes with Bill Ward. One kept me company as I headed into to Campbelltown, that's Scotland land, not Australia land, to do the grocery shopping on Friday. And then, of course, we had Bill last Friday, and then he featured again on Monday when we had the assignment show. And it kept me thinking about nice, positive things as I headed to, I hope I've got this right, Loch Gilped, to the dreaded dentist. He's probably very nice, but I don't seem to get past the whole hideous, painful, sharp, pointy things into the mouth horror to get to find that out. I think we've talked about this before, I know, but what's a repeat between friends? I think photography and dentists, or photographers and dentists, those that work professionally in the field of photography, some of them at least that make portraits in, I suppose, more social, or not necessarily social, if you're a full-time portrait photographer, or like me, an event photographer who meets plenty of people who you make portraits of, then photographers and dentists have some sort of similarity between them, in that we often hear people say, I don't want to be here, or I hate having my photo taken, or I hate having my teeth looked at. It's the opening gambit of many folk that we meet. Oh, don't want to be here, don't like you. It's nothing personal. But it often is, or at least you can feel like it is. And also, I took a picture of this. I did try to find it, Sarah, but my cataloguing let me down big time. And I was sat in the dentist a few visits ago, and I looked up at the light from the chair, and it was made by a company called Delight. I thought, there's irony for many people who are sat in this chair who are feeling anything but that to be here. Anyway, I often take ICM photographs, says Sarah, intentional camera movement, and have shared some with the Facebook group. And I love the essence of the colours and the forms, and I identified strongly with what Bill was talking about. I'm a bit of a learning addict, always wanting to know more about anything I do in photography. I enjoy pushing myself. I think that's the fantastic thing particularly, and Bill talked about this, didn't he, about digital photography, where you can experiment, make lots and lots of pictures without thinking, oh, there's another pound, click, another pound, click, a pound, Neil, and the rest. And even if it doesn't work, says Sarah, I'm thinking how I can make my pictures work next time. So you and Bill have me out of the car, traipsing along and across beaches, headlands and hillsides, experimenting with lens movement rather than my more usual camera movement. Yes, because that's the other way to do it, as I was saying just a moment ago. Am I the only one who enjoys the shopping trips for the distractions to be enjoyed en route? That's a good way of putting it. It's quite the art to get a photograph that feels right, and the final images are more about creating than taking, more abstract than real. And, I like that. I'm attaching a few images to share in case your other listener hasn't already added anything. I like the concept that you've now applied yourself to the other listener idea. That warms the cockles of my heart, so it does. There's a bit of an explosive feel. Oh, Sarah says, as I explore this different style, it's fun to try something new. By the way, these were all taken with my New to me, Canon EOS M6, courtesy of mpb.com, after my original faithful friend packed up, and a Sigma 17-70, which gave me room to zoom as the moments took me. Sarah's pictures will be on the assignment page, episode 353, if you would like to go and see them. And they're fantastic. Thank you, Sarah, for sending those in. And you're right, experimentation. That's what this is all about. And then here's a letter from Colin Mayer in Australia land, who sent pictures in for the assignment at the start of the week as well. That assignment being, as we said, from actor, photographer, actor. One doesn't come before the other, as we found out. Bill Ward, who invited us, yes, to try ICM. Hello, Neil. Really enjoyed the episode with Bill. I think it was because, although hemispheres apart in our careers, we do have one thing in common, and that's that we both love our careers and we love our photography equally. So good to hear that there are others like me in that regard. Now, on to the assignment. Intentional camera movement. Actually, I do practice this genre from time to time, but I might need to do it more. Here's a few ICM shots for you. And he sent in 4, 2 of which I've popped on the assignment page, and 2, actually I put 2 on the show page today as well, I think. Why didn't I do that with yours as well, Sarah? Well, I'm not quite sure. I'd slept between the 2. As for this week's episode, Neil, well, I'm a bit torn. Oh, yes? Why? I really do enjoy a bit of sports photography, and I do like the sound of your guest, capturing great football goals and so on. However, I don't like the sound of this. With you being English and the FIFA World Cup being on, I am worried that you might mention 1966 at least once, or maybe twice. Not that there's anything wrong with 1966, it's a great year. I was born then, but I know what you lot are like. A goal or 6 and it's all coming home. It's coming home, football's coming home, and so on. Yes, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, he says, but I'm trusting you, not to mention Jeff Hurst, Martin Peters, Bobby Moore, Nobby Stiles, Bobby Charlton, Jimmy Greaves, or any other members of the team from 1966. I'm not quite sure what to say. I have a feeling that my guest is going to mention a few names and probably the event, being that 1966 launched his career and very much his photographic life. But it's a story. Don't worry. We're not labouring the football's coming home thing at all. Pups, come out of there. No, he's right next. Come on, that's the canal. Look, I know you think that that's grass, but it's not. You're going to fall straight through that into the water. Oh, please. So keep up the good work you do with the Photowalk community. Colin. I will do my best today, but remember, there is some context to today's story to come with my guest. In the meantime, though, let me play you a few moments from last week's show, since you wrote to us during the week, where my guest Bill Ward talked about the whys, the hows of intentional camera movement. It was fantastic to spend time with him. Really, really enjoyed our photo walk.
Sort of lenses wise, just often in the woods I would be using something reasonably sort of mid to long range really. So I'd probably start here, if I was doing intentional camera movement, I would start here with something like a 24-90, or 24-70, or the equivalent sort of mid-range lens. That's what I've got on my camera here.
Always zooms?
Yes, usually zooms, because it gives you, they tend to be small and light for certainly the ones that I use. Certainly for intentional camera movement, and it keeps your options wide and open. And if you're doing this kind of a thing, and particularly if it's a place that you haven't been before, I have been here before, but you're never quite sure what you're going to meet, what you're going to bump into. So in that kind of case, I kind of like to have as many options in the bag as possible. And also for intentional camera movement, you can use zooms, you can use sort of the zoom mechanism on it in terms of both using the zoom. You can't see this, obviously, we're on the radio, but
I always like to believe they can see out the other side.
That's right, of course.
It depends how well you are at painting a picture.
That's right, yeah. Using the power of your imagination.
Yes,
that's right. But what I'm doing is just very slowly and lightly using the zoom in and out, like you might in a zoom burst, but not in a kind of front to back kind of way. Just using it to kind of softly kind of just blur the edges of things, and also moving the camera sometimes at the same time. And you can get some quite nice effects in the wood doing that. And actually, I've done a series of photographs on the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which is in my hometown where we live now in Bristol, the kind of the iconic kind of structure of Bristol. I've done sort of various projects there where I've sort of used kind of very long exposure ICM, so I mean, well, relatively long, sort of 8 or 9 seconds, just to soften the edges of things. And I've used sort of various kind of zoom kind of movements to do that there.
That's Bill Ward from last week. Well, twice over the last week. Friday with a photo walk, of course, and as we played a bit there, and the assignment show from Monday. Pups, I promise next time we'll take you as well. Barney's just looked back at me and that, you didn't take me this time. I would have really enjoyed that, Woods. I'm sure you would. Let me get a picture. Hold on, Pups, wait a minute. I'm taking a bit longer with my pictures today because I'm using a fully manual setup on my X Pro 1. And it takes a little while just to get focus because it's a manually focusing using focus peaking, which is not easy on the X Pro 1 to be honest. I'm going to try and get some sun flare. F8. I'm at 640 ISO, which is a bit high, but I've got a dog lead in one hand, a microphone in the other, and I'm also balancing the camera in the in the hand that has the dog lead. So I'll stick with 640 and just have to increase my shutter speed to 500th. Let's see if we can get any flare at all across the canal. I'm vignetting the picture slightly with the tree just around me in the top and the left-hand side of the frame. One more of those. Of course, when you look at these on the show page, my sketchbook images, they may be truly out of focus, in which case we'll call them art. Right, send your pictures, just as you heard a moment ago from Sarah and Colin, to the email address, which is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. And it's lovely to hear from you, because I get plenty of letters that are just, I say just, I don't mean that to sound like I think they're mean-spirited because they've not sent pictures in. No, not at all. Stories that are just stories, words, and then those that come with pictures as well, which is wonderful because it's great to see where you are walking around the globe. If you're sending your pictures in, send them 2,000 pixels wide, please. Give us a chance. Give the email box a chance, so it's not groaning under the pressure of great big images, if you can. I know that some of our photographers and our photo walkers are not really so au fait with optimizing pictures, making them the correct pixel dimensions that we're asking for. And if that is the case, this might interest you. Oh, here's another pillbox. Hang on. I'm digressing. You, Neil, digressing. One day we will do there's that heron. One day we'll do a feature about pillboxes. Hey, Pups, come away. No. He's found a mole. Come away. Is that a mole? Something's dug a hole. A hole for a mole. Right, back on track. Pups, come on. Here we go. Yes, on that note, remember a few weeks ago I was talking about a couple of tools that you can use to make your pictures a better size for posting online. That's not so technical, I know, but you know what I mean. Not just for this show, but if you're making blogs. Come away, Pups, there we go. There's loads of moles and holes. Or would there be water voles around here? There's a few tools we talked about. Blog Stomp was one. You just slide your pictures into Blog Stomp, which is an app which you keep on your desktop, and it resizes. It can do all sorts of things, make collages and so on. Or there's JPEG Mini, which squashes your pictures magically so they're smaller and take less time to download. So yeah, Blogstomp, JPEG Mini. We mentioned a few others I know, and we mentioned one that was a free one called Riot Optimizer. And I had this email coming from Emma Romanoa. I just wanted to share, Neil, another way of doing this that I think looks better than some of the free ones you mentioned. Or I'm always up to be corrected. After some exploring, I found this online and wanted to share it with you. I'll put the link on the page today, otherwise you'll be sat there with your pen saying, what? Hold on, Neil. Say that again. Oh, no, go back, rewind. What was the word you said before? It's pretty handy, this online tool, because it squishes down JPEGs and PNGs as well. It doesn't have the bells and whistles that Blogstomp does, which can make collages, etc., as I said. But let me share Emma's tip, since it's a nice free bit of software. I like that price, Neil. I like it. Right. This way, pups. Let's go over the bridge, see what's over here. It's a bridge to nowhere. I'm on the road to... Who did that song? A letter from Kelly in a very, very snowy Canada land. One day it was sunny and the leaves were golden. The next day the snows came and that was it. All changed in one day, it seems. Kelly sent in some pictures and then I gave her some homework, really. And that homework was, well, let's call it an assignment, to go and show the seasons change. Neil, I know where you are. You're near the railway. What gave that away? Yes, to show the seasons change so we could talk about it on the show and show it on the show page. And that's exactly what Kelly did. So thank you, Kelly Mitchell. Hi, Neil. I've entitled these pictures, which I will share on the show page, as I say, I miss my flip-flops. And from the photographs, you will see why. Now, Neil, assignment or homework? I haven't had homework for many, many years. Not sure if I even remember how to do homework. But the assignment was the change of seasons. And well, Calgary only seems to have two, summer and winter, with the exception of the old joke regarding construction. Now, I didn't get this. The construction season. Is that an official third season? Maybe it is in Calgary. Summer here, says Kelly, is filled with warmth and light and all the colours of the rainbow. All is new. If you can hear, well, you've got the trains in the background here. I'm walking past another lock here. And well, winter, what can I say? Neil, it's cold in Calgary here. It's dark and it's grey. Don't forget, Kelly, we've given you a new word to think about when it comes to explaining skies. Blah. However, there's a quality in the light that's so different. It's low and long, and it's always shootable. Winter light hits the buildings so differently, and it reflects in amazing ways. Summer light, well, that surrounds a subject, whereas winter light, it sort of skims the subject. And she sent a short video of the first real storm of winter, which I've popped on the show page. It's wonderful. And you can almost feel the cold. Let's go through here, pups. There's a weir here. I'm not fishing you out of there. That's for sure. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. He's looking back at me. No, I'm going to jump in. No, keep moving. I've shared 5 pictures that you've sent in as well, so thank you for these. And my favourites, I absolutely love the very simple and delicate pictures of small pictures of foliage and the leaf that's just resting in the snow. Absolutely beautiful, Kelly. Really. Do go to the show page today and see them. Those sort of pictures, delicate nature pictures, are right up my street. You'll find them on the show page today. Right, let's have a roll of inspiration. While we're talking about the word simplicity, I think another captain of simplicity. Episode 308, when I spoke to Gareth Ewan Jones. And there's a beauty about his work for sure, and I would love you to go and visit that show page and see what he was working on. Pups, come out here. What have you found? Oh, that's not so nice. That's a dead thing in the water. Move on. Gareth, we're talking about beauty. Pups, you do sometimes spoil the moment. I love you dearly, my little furry friend. Gareth photographs trees lit from above by lights hanging off of a drone, which is really an inspired idea. He stays on terra firma and he makes these wonderful, dramatic, but stunningly uncomplicated pictures. It's a fantastic idea. A drone not for pictures, but for the lighting. Here's Gareth.
I was thinking about how to isolate a tree, how to make it like a portrait. So the focus is solely on the tree. There's nothing else in the background. If you're doing a portrait of a person, you don't really, I mean, it might work here and there, but you don't really want lots of people in the shot. You just want, and with trees, they don't tend to be on their own. They tend to be surrounded by lots of other trees.
Yeah, you always find the perfect tree, and there's 3 or 4 in the background. You think,
totally. That's it. And so you can find an interesting looking tree, but it might be engulfed by others. So it was just solving that was the big thing at first. I use lighting quite a lot in my sort of everyday work, and I know from that you can really knock backgrounds out if you're just lighting a subject. And so I thought, well, that might work with the tree, but then you'd need the light very high in the air. You'd need darkness. You'd need a way of kind of just making that tree stand out from everything else. And so then drones became the obvious answer, like how to get a drone in the air and attach a light to it. So I played around with smaller prosumer drones like Mavic Pros, and so that was my first attempt at it, was using that tiny little Mavic Pro, which is an amazing drone, but it
can't pick stuff up in the air.
Lift much weight. I mean, it's capable of a small amounts. I think it's 300 grams or something like that, but it's not capable of much. But I actually I had the drone for ages, and I just sort of thought, well, I'm going to attach a flashlight, a small 100-watt flashlight to it. Yeah. It might burn out the motors. It might be the end of the Mavic, but I'll just see what it does. So I actually superglued a flashlight. Was the first time I've done it. Superglued a flashlight to the bottom of a Mavic Pro, if you can imagine such a thing. I've got photos of it. Right. Hand launched it, sent it off. The motors were screaming. It was awful. I knew it wasn't going to last, but it worked. I got the flash a good sort of 45 feet above the tree, flashed it at night time, and instantly I was pretty blown away by the results. Like, it just looked much better than I had hoped for it. It just straight away, I could see there was a lot of potential there.
Gareth Ewan-Jones, and I will link to him on the show page today. Do go and look at the show page. I know I say it, and it might be one of those things you say where you think, yeah, Neil, I'll get round to it. But honestly, the photographs make so much more sense, the ones that we talk about on the programme, when you can cross-reference them, he says, sounding like a geography teacher. And the links that we have, and there's videos, video inspirations. There's a film today to go with my guest as well. So, go to the show page, which you will see linked to within your app. I will remind you at the end, as always. And make sure you have a coffee and at least a packet of Garibaldi's at the ready. Pups, come this way. He's determined to go into the drink today. You're not going for a swim. It's far too cold. It's not cold as in Kelly cold. We've not got the snows, no, granted, but it is, what are we today, 5, 6 degrees? That's chilly enough not to choose to go for a swim. Honestly, pups, I promise you, trust me on this particular one. It's the photo walk of a Friday, and that's why you can hear all the sounds as we walk. I leave them all in: the trains, the birds, the canal barges as they're going past today, just everything. That's what a photo walk is about. It's me, it's you, with our cameras, both of us. And I take, of course, your letters out with me as well. I don't know what Barney's seen. Barney, what have you seen, darling? He's acting in his spooked manner. Oh, he doesn't like that. He's looking at the pillbox. There's another pillbox. These defences, these concrete defences that line many of our canals and roadways in the UK from World War II, that would have been manned by the Home Guard, volunteer army members. They're all the way along the path, particularly on this canal. It's a major waterway, I suppose, between London, the west of London, joining up with the Thames at some stage, and towards the west in Bristol. Hang on, here comes a jogger. Pups, wait here. He started jumping up at joggers. Got a few bad habits at the moment. Wait there. Hi there. Yeah. He didn't say hello, pups. We waited and everything. He could see we waited. He did look a bit out of breath. Right. You know that I like a good human story, especially the kind of stories that a mix of there are a real mix of happenstance, luck, and hard graft, because that's what drives the world often, isn't it? Right place, right time. Sometimes right place, wrong time. Because for some, as in the case really of some of the conflict photographers that we've talked to, they cite that as the reason they photograph or manage to get so many important pictures. And I like this because a series of things in the story that my guest is about to impart today, they click quite literally, beautifully into place to make this story. A man aged 19 who found himself working in football, and of course there's an appropriate nature to that with the World Cup going on at the moment, but this is a human story as much as a sporting story, just so that Colin feels comfortable. As you'll find out, he didn't necessarily even really want to work in football, but no more spoilers. It's a two-part story, and yes, Colin, we will be talking about the World Cup, and we will be referencing 1966. It's a reference point because it's context with regard to the story, the complete story. And we'll be talking about lions of a very different nature to the 3 lions which are worn on the football badge of the England jersey. So there's a strange connection, really, between 3 lions and 1 lion, which we'll talk about in the second part of the story. My guest only scratches the surface of the stories that he's made in this illustrious 4-decade career that he's had, working for the Times, working for the Daily Mail, working, as a freelance for other publications as well. And he was at the Times when the likes of Don McCullin were syndicating stories in the supplements. And there's things to talk about there, how photography has changed and how storytelling has changed. So let me come back to that in a moment, because I had an idea for a part 3 and 4 and an actual walk around London. So we'll start with 3 lions anyway for part 1 of our story today. And then part 2, as I say, is the story of 1 lion who was for sale in Harrods. Yes, you did hear that correctly. This is my guest, Derek Catani. Derek, a good, strong Italian surname. I am wondering whether you will be wearing a blue shirt or a white shirt during this World Cup.
Oh, it's got to be a white shirt, Neil.
Catani is an Italian name, though, isn't it?
Catani is an Italian name. Born and brought up in London, I was, but my grandparents were Italian. Part of a circus troupe, amazingly. And they travelled Europe in a circus as a circus act, and they finally came to Leeds Hippodrome, and there they got off the circus trail and appeared in the Leeds Hippodrome for many years. Then, of course, my father and mother joined up, and they lived in Redcar. My father was a photographer, but a really odd photographer. His job was to photograph livestock at farming events.
Right. So it's sort of a kind of a northern James Revilius in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, if you had the biggest bull or sheep in the ring, and you won the first prize, you obviously wanted a picture of it. And that was one of his jobs, which was amazing.
So there is no Catani travelling troupe anymore?
No, there's no Catani travelling troupe. No, I'm the only travelling troupe around the world with my camera around my neck.
So look, I've made a promise not to labour 56 years of hurt since England's 66 World Cup win, remembering, of course, that we have a very international audience. And whilst I'm sat in a studio in the very shired heartlands of England, our audience are of all international flag flavours and sporting interests. But today, though, you have a very human story which I absolutely love. And I saw a video about you and I thought, must try and get Derek on the show during this period, because it makes most sense with the World Cup happening.
Yep.
And this story does start with an opportunity, and it's afforded to you at the tender age of 19. When you moved into an office next to a football manager who happened to be called Alf Ramsey.
Well, I was given the job by the great Sir Dennis Fellows. The Football Association was quite an institution, and it was run by lots of sort of headmasters, if you like, and he was a senior headmaster, highly respected within the FA. And I got the opportunity to become the Football Association film librarian. Now, back in those days, the BBC covered all the matches at Wembley and other places with 16mm film. Yeah. And it was their duty to send the film to the Football Association so that they could send these films out as coaching aids. So if there was an England-Hungary match, about a week later, I would get these great big 16mm cans, and I would go into my little sort of studio, and there I would have a unit which you can put an empty reel on, and then you put the film on, and then you go, and then you can push it through this very, very small screen, and it's called a splicer. So that was my major job.
But rewinding just a little bit to how you got the opportunity to be working for the Football Association, despite the fact you openly admit you didn't really care for football when you got the job, your start in photography was a sort of mixture of dad and a school teacher at school who really believed in you. That fortuitous start, finding a mentor who could see your potential.
It just fell in perfectly for me because we had an amazing teacher called Mr. Smith, and I have to say I was the top of the class because I just aspired to all this, and he had after school extra lessons, and I would be the first in the classroom, and he'd literally kick me out at night. Fast forward to when I was 16, I was about to go up to the sixth form, and he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be a photographer, and he said, well, there is an opportunity to take photographs for the Football Association, but it mainly is for managing the film library. Yeah. So would you like to go along and have a look? There was I standing in front of the headmaster, Dr. Sir Dennis Fellows, and he asked me all sorts of pertinent questions, one of which was, do you like football? And I went, not really, sir.
And you still got the job.
And he looked at me by surprise and he said, oh, why not? I said, I play rugby, sir. But surely you're looking for a film librarian and not a football pundit.
Well, you must have.
I don't think I use pundit because that's a very late.
Yeah.
But a football expert.
Yeah, but he must have admired your audacity.
Yeah, I think he did. And he said, well, I like your portfolio and I like your openness about everything. I was handed in a very traditional sort of ceremony this Nikon in a leather case with a 50mm f2 lens on it, and he said, at some time you might be able to take some pictures for the Football Association. I said, okay, thank you, sir. And so this was all great stuff to me. I phoned Mr. Smith up, my teacher,
told him, yeah,
and showed him the camera and all that sort of thing. Anyway. I got myself into my little office next door to Alf Ramsey's, and I was told how to do all this splicing, etc., by somebody else in the department. It was basically the coaching department that I was working for and with, and the library was getting quite extensive.
Now, I know your first meetings with the legendary football manager Alf Ramsey was when you were tasked to take him a cuppa and his favourite custard cream biscuit each morning at 11 o'clock, very traditional. And you ended up in this office practically next door. Tell me what happened, though, that really changed your relationship with him. The day that, well, I suppose the day that he came knocking on your door, so to speak.
He sort of poked his head around the door and said, what do you do here? And I said, well, I've got these films of, say, the last England match, and I've got to get them ready to send out to a coaching association up in the Midlands who want to see last week's match. And he said, oh, that's very interesting, very interesting. And he said, so you have the whole match in 16mm, 90-minute format? And I went, yes, I do. He said, no, and you can edit this film. And I said, well, yes, I suppose I can. He said, well, great. Do you think you could pick out all the free kicks and probably the goals and the corners that England did against, say, Hungary last week and splice them all together? And I went, well, yeah, absolutely. It will take me a day or two. He said, no hurry. And so a couple of days before the England training session, he'd say, is that film ready? And I went, yes, it is, actually. And so on I got to with the coach, with my projector, and we got to the England training ground, and I'd go into a room and set up the screen and the projector. I'd go outside and do my best to take pictures of the team with my Nikon F, with my 50mm lens and my 400. I used to use Tri-X, Kodak Tri-X. I used to love Tri-X film. And so I'd take the odd picture, and then I'd have a bit of lunch with the boys together. And they'll all be laughing and joking. And slowly, they got to know me very well by first name. In the afternoon, we'd have the coaching session in the room where I set up the projector. I did this about 2 or 3 times over the course of about a year. And it was about 2 weeks before the game started. We went down to Roehampton again, set it all up again. I'd noticed that when I actually played the film backwards, inadvertently leaving the lamp on, you could see these hilarious moments when the England team were running backwards. And this made them in gags of laughter. And by that time, I'd become quite astute with looking out for a different picture, basically. And I'd had good experience, at the football matches and all that went with it. So luckily I had my camera and a flash gun on that particular day. And I turned the film on, and there it was running backwards, and there was the whole team absolutely gawping with laughter. And I sneaked down to the side of the projection screen, pointed my camera in that direction, one quick flash, and I'd got this amazing shot of the England team
all laughing
at themselves.
Yeah.
So I immediately phoned my friend on the picture desk of the Daily Mail up, Johnny Golding, who was the great picture editor in those days. And I said, I think I've got a very good sports picture for you for Saturday. And this was like the Wednesday. So he said, okay, bring it straight in. So I went straight in there and went into the dirty dark rooms, all covered in bromide and fixer and swimming around in stuff. Processed this film. I got them to print up a big picture of this shot of the team laughing, showed Johnny on the picture desk. And he said, wow, that's great. That's a great shot. Went across to the sports desk and they said, oh my goodness, how'd you get this? And I told them the story. And they went, that is so good. And they published it, back page, splashed it right across the back page. And it kind of started me off.
That was your big opportunity. I'm also interested, with the film work that you were doing, even though you said you were sending them out to various teams, that was your job as a librarian. These must have been very early days where that kind of coaching wasn't done. Nobody was necessarily looking back at 16mm films. You were quite progressive, I would imagine.
It was a great innovation.
It
was a great innovation because why Alf Ramsey had hit on this idea, I have no idea. He just saw the potential there and thought, right, let's go for it.
Well, it kind of occurs to me that it's an idea that came together through cups of tea, custard creams, the fact that you had an office next to him, and he just happened to ask a question where he said, yeah, I'll have a go at that. So there must be a part of you, Derek, that says you were responsible for the 1966 England World Cup victory.
Well, of course, absolutely. I credit myself to all the goals, including the disputed one, which wasn't disputed in my mind. It was definitely a goal. You can see the bounce of the net at the top. So, no, I jest. I'd like to think that I had a small part in that great moment when they won the World Cup.
Just a shame that you didn't film a few or didn't share a few more videos of penalty shootouts in the ensuing years. But let's come back on track. For those that don't understand our rather strange relationship with penalty shootouts, I'll move on. 66, being there as a young photographer, huge footballing event. You're thrown in very much at the deep end. There must have been some sort of pecking order, yet you had special privileges that some of the press boys, and it would have been boys, I'm afraid, in those days, probably exclusively, they didn't have.
No, exactly. If we're talking about the big day itself, I was with all the other photographers who on the pitch, and these were some of the, if not the world's best sports photographers. They wouldn't be sending out some sort of Fleet Street reporting photographer who didn't know much about football.
No.
These are all top flight guys who I met before on the lead up to the big matches like England, Portugal. Great shots of Eusebio heading the ball with Nobby Stiles, and on what sort of thing. And so I did know these characters, although they thought it was very strange that a 19-year-old, very young, very fresh-faced young lad with a camera that didn't have a motor drive on it. Everything was manual, and I begged, stole, and borrowed another camera off another photographer friend of mine. In the newspaper, and the weeks and weeks before, I'd actually saved up enough money for a long lens, which I thought was a long lens. It was a 240 millimeter Novaflex lens, and this
which is about it's about as long as your arm, isn't it?
It is about as long as your arm, and it works in a very odd way. You don't actually get the focus by twisting the actual barrel. It's done by a hand grip. It looks a bit like a gun.
Yes, I've seen you using it. Yeah, and this was the state of the art sports lens, and I was able to get hold of one of these, and so I was equipped, apart from not having a motor drive. So I would be picking out my moments very carefully, and I was very, very good at being able to almost fire off the same amount of pictures in 1 or 2 seconds of an incident as some of the boys would be by just putting their finger on the trigger and getting 3 or 4 shots. Remember, again, we're not talking about digital. We're talking about film in these days. Yeah, and of course now we're used to sort of 15, 16, 20, 30 shots in a row.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so, I would have maybe 3 or 5 pictures of, say, the goal, the aftermath of the goal, and the celebration. Luckily for me, because I'd been showing the England team all the corners and all the bits and pieces, and then out on the training ground, I was locked away with the team for a whole week and a half. No other photographers apart from there was a press day on the Thursday, but during that time I was up there with the team as mates, and so I understood a lot of their moves, and I understood what was going to happen in a set piece, in a free kick or a corner or something like that, which gave me quite an advantage because say if it was a corner, I recognised that how he held his hand up aloft and then he'd wave it, that the ball would be flying further out into outside the penalty area. Yeah. So it wasn't sort of a haphazard moment. These moves were very, very carefully orchestrated. So there was I ready focused on Jeff Hurst or Alan Ball or whoever, and a couple of the other photographers were waiting in a completely different way. So as soon as the ball came over, I knew that it was an 85% chance of getting a bloody good picture.
So actually that sort of personal relationship you had with them paid off there. But I'm intrigued also because you were with the team in a way that many photographers would simply not be allowed to be these days.
Exactly.
Did you photograph them personally while they were relaxing as well? And
oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that emotion like?
It was. I mean, they were such. There was no prima donnas, and they all accepted me into their inner circle, if you like. Yeah. And in those days, at 19. God only knows why, but I used to smoke, and so did some of the other teams. They used to smoke cigarettes.
I know the footballers used to. My grandfather had a tobacconist shop, and the Spurs players would pass by his place on the way to White Hart Lane to pick up their tobacco before a match. I know.
Indeed. I've got a great shot of Jimmy Greaves coming back from the local golf course with Bobby Moore, and there's Jimmy with a pipe, and he used to smoke a pipe. Yeah. And especially. During the training sessions, Alf would sort of look at me in a way in which is, Derek, haven't you taken enough pictures today? And why don't you pick up a football and kick it around for us? Because boasting aside, I was quite a fit lad. I used to do a lot of cycle racing. Yeah. And so I was out on my bike, sort of 3 nights a week. I might say some of the boys weren't quite as fit as me. I could run like a bloody rabbit. I mean, it was great.
You could have ended up in the team.
Well, Alf said, join in, but don't tackle.
No. On the day of the final, I'm being cautious here for all those that said, please, Neil, don't be going on about how England lifted the trophy all those many years ago. But I will ask, did the boys come across to you at all? Were you able to get involved in the action of being anywhere near that famous World Cup as it was lifted aloft?
Oh, yeah. They recognised that I was on the pitch. Bobby recognised that I was on the pitch and gave me that extra sort of 5 seconds, wonderful. 3 seconds of standing in front of me, and then they would go jogging off. Don't forget, we the photographers on the pitch on the day were allowed to run with the team around the pitch. It's completely out of the question now. You're stuck behind great big hoardings, but in those days you could run around with a team back, and so half the time you're running backwards because they were running forwards. But the boys were very, very good like that. They sort of say, "Oh, look, there's Derek. Well, let's give him an extra couple of shots," or jump on each other's shoulders and stuff. So it was the euphoria of the whole match was incredible. I'd covered a lot of the big football matches before, the semi-finals and the quarter-finals, but there wasn't anywhere near as much atmosphere as there was at Wembley on that big day. It just sent shivers up your spine, because it sort of the noise, the crowd participation was such that you were completely enveloped in this sound of people screaming and shouting and waving and enjoying themselves.
Did you go to the after-match party? You did.
Yeah.
Did you put your camera down for that one?
Did actually. Well, I had one camera.
Barnes, let's go up here. Let's look up here. Is it another bridge to nowhere? It's a beautiful bridge. Bridge 73. I have a feeling that we've walked over this bridge and talked about this on the photo walk before. Let me get a sketchbook image. All right. 500th. I'm still on this ISO 640. Neil, why don't you change that ISO down? It's fine. Manual focusing. Using my X Pro 1 today with my 28mm Yashica lens that was gifted by Tim Binder. The gift that never stops gifting. There we go. One more. Make sure we've got that slightly different composition. I'll just push the bridge slightly to the right. There we go. Pups, you're very good today. Usually, when I'm out with my fully automatic X100V, you're quite impatient about me taking pictures, making pictures. Language, Neil, language. But today you're pretty good. I'm taking time. I'm having to stop and manually focus and think about the shots a bit more. It really is a bridge that goes nowhere. There's a load of bramble that stops me going any further. Let's go this way. Come on, pups. We're walking along the towpath today towards the town of Hungerford on this photo walk. Right, part 2 of my guests coming shortly. I know you'll enjoy the next story. We start with a bit of football, but we end definitely not in footballing land. We end with a very bizarre story. Certainly the kind of story that you wouldn't be able to tell these days, because the practice of, keeping lions as a pet are understandably forbidden. But it was only the late 60s where this happened in the UK. Up to the late 60s, you could buy these exotic animals like panthers and all sorts of things that you could just put on a lead and take for a walk. Goodness only knows what would happen if we met one of those, myself and Barney, walking along the towpath here. He'd be brunch before we knew it, wouldn't you, Barnes? Yes. Don't like that idea very much at all. My thanks to our extra milers, those who walk and go the extra photo walk mile to support this show with modest monthly or annual donation, which means your kindness and your new word now, amazingness, goes to all paying for the music licensing, the hosting, the studio costs, and all the other running outgoings that we have, and some that we don't even know are on the way. I referenced back to the brains of the studio breaking just a few weeks ago. Barney, out. Come on. I don't want to put I don't want to put towels to dry dog as part of those expenses. Come on, it's cold. The water is cold. It's not fine jump in here sort of weather. So yes, thank you for your support. It does make a world of difference. And to support this building project, this weekly walk, this glimpse into other people's lives through the literal lens of their cameras, and the generosity that they have of sharing personal stories, your help is most appreciated. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by going to photowalk.show and then hitting the support the show button, the nice orange one. Talking of orange, look in front of me. Huge, great, beautiful oak. Train going by in the background just to spoil this moment. I like trains, you know I like trains, but this was just a moment of me and this and the wind just flowing through this. You might be able to hear it in the background once the 8:50 to London's gone by. The sound, can you hear it? That's all the leaves. It's still held on to its. It's beautiful. Look at it. It's still held on to its leaves. Let me get a picture because I've got a wide angle on my X Pro 1, so this should work beautifully. Here we go. I'm going to have to go to F11, and funnily enough, looking through the eyepiece, it looks a different colour entirely. We'll see what that looks like later on when I run it through some processing. Beautiful. Oh, look, and there's another pillbox just sort of hidden behind it. I don't know why, because that's not on the... that's on the train line, of course. That'll be why. And because... Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts there. We're photographing a tree. Well, we are on a photo walk, and because you go the extra mile supporting the show, I go the extra mile for you as well with my weekly extra mile show of a Sunday, which is a diary show and a chance to hear bonus unaired parts of conversations with guests on that show sometimes. We have our midweek, sometimes Thursdays, replay show, playing back the unplugged interviews with previous guests, and our monthly Zoom, which is where we all meet up and see where we've all been photographing across the last month. And because I like you to meet our extra milers, here's Elias Camaratos. A note from him. Hello, Neil. I'm a bit behind on my photo walk episodes, mainly because they've become longer. And my 40-minute walk doesn't allow me to finish an episode in one go. I do keep revisiting this, and we've talked about this in the Zoom, making the episodes slightly shorter, but they always seem to come out at the same length. So they're kind of, well, they are where they are. So as a result, I save them up and I binge them on my 3-hour drives to my job. Having said that, I was listening this morning to the episode you recorded while you were here in France, episode 338. Yes, absolutely adored making an episode in France. If I could spend my life making episodes around Europe, I'm not sure what the family would say, but me and Barnes have to have his dog passport. We'd have a ball. This way, Barnes, come on. Good boy, this way. And I wanted to take you up, says Elias, on your offer. Oh yes, on that episode I did say that we had a load of our old flasks, our walking flasks, with the when it was Photography Daily before it became the Photo Walk earlier on this year. So I'd like to take you up on your offer of one of those flasks, if you still have them. I do. There's a few languishing in the box next to the box that has the brand new flasks in them, which we give away sometimes. My justification for asking for this version of the merch in particular is because I started listening to your then daily podcast quite by chance from its early days when we were in the heat of the pandemic. As such, that time of the podcast has a kind of sentimental value, since it gave me and others, I'm sure, a much-needed mental distraction from what was going on. And just for context, I'm attaching a picture of this morning's walk taken with my phone. It's dark when I leave the house, so I don't really take my real camera around with me in the winter. Well, you've done the picture justice with your that you made with your phone. Yeah, there's a slight amount of motion blur on it because, well, you can't quite do the same things with a smartphone that you can with your DSLR or your modern mirrorless. But it's that's what sketchbooking's about, isn't it? Recording your life, showing where you've been, That's important, far more important than the odd bit of motion blur and a sensor that can't quite cope with low light like our fancier cameras can. I'll pop that on the show page today because I think it's worth sharing. And go on then. You've convinced me. I'll send you one of the older flasks. I'll have to do a count up actually. We've given away a few of late. Sent a few out. If you're waiting for your flask, by the way, don't worry, it is on the way. I've got to do a whole load of posting. It's on my list next to win the lottery, so it's coming to you soon. If you'd like to claim a flask for your walking, just send me some pictures of your walks, where you've been, what you've been doing. Tell me a story, and occasionally, completely randomly, I pick out one of those stories and award the coveted Photowalk flask, which takes cold and, good for those in the northern hemisphere at least, hot drinks at this time of year. Come on, Barnes. Boy, he really has got the scent on today. I'll get a picture of him. Mike Miller said a few weeks ago I should be making more pictures of Sir Barkalot as we're out. So, note to self, Mike, I shall endeavour to make one. He moves too quickly. He doesn't sit still enough. I'd make a terrible pet photographer, particularly with a camera with a manual lens, that's for sure. Right, pups, come on. This way. Come on. To become an extra miler, click on the support the show icon on the front of the website. Oh, sorry, Barnes. I just clobbered him. I'm so sorry, Di. I didn't mean to do that. I'm in trouble now. Just clobbered him with the letters. And all right, okay. Yes. What's the problem? I know. All right. God, dear, on cue barking, not bad. She'll have to sign you up for something Disney flavoured. Make lots of money. What would the film be? Hey, who would play me? Hold on. All right, you can have a treat. You've been very patient today. I'm very impressed. You're very muddy. Right, okay, there we go. Hold on. Nice. Got some more? This is like ASMR dog channel, isn't it? Hey, you can hear you eating. There we go. Got to do it on the microphone if we're going to make any money, Barnes. Oh, don't drop it in the mud. There we go, perfect. ASMR. Or is it AMSR? ASMR? Audio sensory, ASMR, that's it. For dogs. I'm not sure that's going to be a big channel. Come on, pups, let's go this way. Right, let's stay in France, or France land. Elias, I should have said, did I mention he was in France or France land? I'm not sure. Enough now, pups, enough. I'm reading a letter now. No. Oi! Stop it. What is it, lassie? It's over there, is it? It's hidden. We want to rescue the day. Yeah, but at this point, the dog... Can I get a word in? At this point, the dog handler would say, enough. Barney. Right, I'm going to have to put you on your lead. Enough, this way. Come on. See, that's why it's called Sir Barkalot. Put him on his lead, magically, he seems to stop. But I like him being off his lead a bit when we're on our walks. It's much easier to photograph and read your letters, that's for sure. One of our other patrons, sorry I'm digressing, I will come back to France land in a moment. One of our very esteemed patrons, Paul Hudson, was visiting the south from the north of England, where he lives this week, and he came by for a coffee, and he met Sir Barkalot, and Sir Barkalot became Sir Growler-Lot. Oh, I've never seen anything like it. Paul, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was your Aaron jumper. He saw the Aaron jumper in you and thought, whoa, dodgy character. Right, come on, let's get back on track. France land. Yes, did I mention Elias was from France? I probably didn't. But Elias lives in France. It's probably why I was interested in the French episode. Oh, I don't know. We've had a piece of music since then. I can't remember what I said. But this is one from Mathieu Chauveau in France with the pictures that I'm about to mention. Well, I'll put those on the show page today so you can enjoy them as well. Do you remember we were talking about the first picture you ever made? Which is, I suppose it's up for interpretation in some ways. We've allowed the subject of first pictures to sort of bend and wave a bit in terms of its context and meaning. I mean, it could be the first one you took. It could be the first roll of film that you processed. I don't know. So, as I say, up to interpretation. Anyway, from Mathieu. Hi, Neil. After listening to episode 350, I thought I would share with you the story of my first real photo. The one that gave me the bug. It's actually 3, and they come as a set. Back in 2010, I was living in Toronto on a working holiday visa. Oh, very nice too. I had a point-and-shoot camera that I used sparingly to record my comings and goings, or as we would call them these days, Matthew, of course, the sketchbook pictures, or your scrapbook pictures. But I was using it to record my comings and goings, nothing serious. But when the G20 summit took place in Toronto, I decided to borrow a friend's DSLR and go and shoot the protests happening at the same time. The experience was nothing short of mystical. Like something inside of me had awakened. The force, maybe. I don't know. Could it have been the force? Perhaps so. All of a sudden, my brain was seeing in frames, always looking for the next picture. The adrenaline of standing between the protesters and the police in riot gear, the satisfaction of finding interesting compositions. There was clearly no turning back for me. The 3 attached pictures were all taken within 1 hour of hitting the streets. I consider them and I like this phrase, the genesis of my photographic journey. I look forward to walking with you and hearing from your other listener. Thank you, Mathieu. Thank you very much. I will put your pictures on the show page today, and you certainly started with a strong subject, didn't you? I mean, a police car being set alight on the street. You were really, really close. I mean, there's a lot of photojournalists who would have said that this was exactly the way that they would have made the story, by getting in close, by taking you into the story, into the pictures. And you did precisely that. And then the picture of the protester standing on top of the police car as well. If they were your first pictures with a DSLR, and the genesis, the start of your journey, they are absolutely phenomenal. And I will put on a link to your website as well on the show page today, because honestly, go and see Mathieu's body of work. It's fantastic. And then here is one from Leonard. Call me Lenny Marsh. I will. From now on, Lenny, you're Lenny. Just a note, really, Neil, to say how much I enjoyed listening to Imran Nouri, your guest on episode 342. Well, the letters today actually refer to quite recent episodes, don't they? There are a few languishing a bit further down the months, which I will get to. If you've sent a letter in, I promise I will soon. I'm not sure how you go about researching your guests, but it's wonderful to hear about photographers who aren't always famous, though still have a life of experience or stories to share. In this case, Imran is at the very start of his experiences in many ways, although it seems to me that he's packed a lot in already. He certainly has. I really enjoyed his can-do attitude and the idea of asking 1,000 strangers for a portrait and then one piece of advice. It's proof that ideas for photo projects don't need to be complex. You're right. As far as the guests go, it's a kind of mixture between people that I know of, photographers that I stumble across, those that I'm introduced to by our fine contributors, those that I'm introduced to by those I interview, and of course the suggestions that are made from our extra milers as well, and you and my other listener. See, it's It's a teamwork thing, this. So that's how we find the guests. And I'm always really fascinated by photographers that are not so known, to hear their stories. So I think that's part of this tapestry of learning about photography. It's equally fantastic, of course, to hear from the superstars, if you will, that sort of in modern parlance, the rock star photographers of our age. But it's the mixing pot, the whole mixing pot that interests me so very much, and hopefully you as well. Shall we hear? Let's have a roll of inspiration, shall we? Shall we hear from Imran Nouri talking about that project that Lenny mentioned a moment ago?
You know, in 2019, when I had first thought of the idea was just to do something that would so radically push me out of my comfort zone that I would be forced to grow really fast. And that was still very much the idea here. Like, the core reason for doing this was personally to get over any fear of talking to strangers at all. And so this was like, this is the most radical way I could possibly think to get over that fear. But yeah, I practiced beforehand. The first time I photographed a stranger and approached a stranger was summer of 2021. I was visiting Chicago before I was living there, and it took me 3 hours to build up the courage to talk to the first person. I chose the camera, and I used a TLR. I chose this twin lens camera because I knew it was going to be an easy conversation starter for talking to strangers. I just knew it. I was like, the vast majority of people alive right now probably have never had their photograph made on a TLR. And so I'd always hold it right there in my right hand as I was walking around looking for strangers to talk to. And it was always like, I almost think it made people trust me more, because they look at me, some random guy, wearing yellow Crocs, coming up to them and saying, "Hey, can I ask you a question real quick?" And they see the old camera in my hand. And most people would probably guess, if they had no context of photography, they'd probably think a camera like that is 100 years old. So definitely a relic. And they look at it, and then they look back at me, and they're like, okay, let's see what this guy has to say. That, and then the final reason being that when you use a twin lens camera, you're shooting from the waist level. And so all of your subjects look tall and confident and powerful. And I loved the idea that all 1,000 people, no matter what they looked like, no matter where they were, every single one of them looks confident and powerful and in charge. So whatever they said, I trusted it. From the photo, you're like, I would trust that person.
Imran Nouri, my guest from a good few weeks ago now. I'll link to Imran, his episode and his work on the show page today. If you'd like to send in your thoughts, your stories, your pictures, then it's, as I say often during the walk, it would not be the same. Well, it would be a much shorter show without you. Send them to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. 2,000 pixels wide, please, if you're sending pictures in, or if you're sending them via your smartphone. Just click the best quality option when you save your pictures to send in. And we have a Facebook group as well, which is I think a really friendly place to go visit. We have stories that are left week by week from our photo walkers wherever they are in the world. If you do pop a picture on to the Facebook page, please, 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 he appeals to you with big, wide, open eyes. Can you leave a few words of context as well, so that we know more about where you're photographing? Doesn't have to be an essay, just a few words, a paragraph, maybe two, if you're feeling generous and you have the time. I went dipping through your stories in our Facebook group. We have a Facebook page and we have a Facebook group. The Facebook group, you can where you send an invite and then we let you in. That's the way the groups work, isn't it? So I was dipping through your stories in the group and I found some real gems. And I won't do it justice, because I'm only going to mention 4 of the dozen or so more that I was looking at immediately anyway, when I was looking through your stories yesterday. And I promise that I will revisit to feature some more on the show as well, because there's some cracking projects going on within the Facebook group that you're sharing. So thank you for that as well, because that's truly inspirational to those who are visiting. But yes, I went dipping into the stories from the group. Robin Chun's Bristolian walk, What a wonderful, I love this, yellow stairwell you found with all the geometry, and there was a person walking up the steps with a match of colour on their jacket. Dave Brown's been working on a project called Swimmers. I often mention, have you found a stick? Oh, pups, you can't possibly carry that all the way. Come on, we've got about a mile to go. I'm not carrying that branch. Are you going to drag it along? Come on then. Yes, Dave Brown, who's been working on a project called Swimmers, which is, as you would imagine, about people what swim, but people what swim in cold waters, i.e. open water swimming, lakes, rivers, the sea, that kind of thing. Fantastic project. And there's a picture of Emma in what looks like the thickest wetsuit money can possibly buy you, standing just in front of the murky depths. And you're a swimmer yourself, aren't you? So, yeah, my hat is off firmly, tipped to you. Richard Smallfield's walk around, I think it's called Raetihi, New Zealand land, finding the old, the new and the unloved shop fronts here and there. That was a cracking project. I know that there was there's a touch of melancholy in some ways. Wistful, maybe that's a better word. And Jennifer Ryer's delicious low camera angles of some reeds. The black and white picture in particular. I think there was a colour version there as well, but the black and white, that's the one that that really captured me. Imagine being on the floor with your camera, looking up through reeds. I could do it here because I'm right next to some reeds now, but I think your picture, Jennifer's enough. You don't need mine as well. Imagine being on the floor, looking up like a scene from Honey, I Shrunk the Photographer. A monochrome, says Jennifer of the Reeds, a photo from today's hike. I do love the different angle and feeling at this time of year when the sun is lower in the sky and the vegetation gets so easily backlit. Oh, I'll take that one. Thank you for sending that in. Those 4 examples will be on the show page today, and do go visit them in the Facebook group if you are an esteemed member there. If you're not, here's an open invite. Come and join us in the Book of Face in our Photowalk show page that we have, our group rather that we have. You are most welcome. Right. Second part today of my conversation with Derek Catani. We are going to, I made, I think, passing reference to this earlier. We're going to go for a second episode, I think. I know. It will be toward the end of February because Derek's on his travels now, I think, to warmer climes for a little while making photo stories. But I want to meet up with Derek in his old stamping ground, Fleet Street. Now, did all the newspapers, pretty much all, I think, move out of Fleet Street to different addresses across London and beyond. But Fleet Street, of course, I say of course, it may not be so obvious, it was and will always remain sort of that sort of nostalgic nod to when newspapers, were the sort of heady days of newspapers and journalists sort of in a thick fug of woodbine, writing into the early hours their stories, and photographers rushing in down to the dark rooms, making their prints, and there's sort of that nostalgia that goes along with the Fleet Street address in newsland, in newspaper land. And so I thought it might be a nice idea to return with Derek, because there are so many stories that he has to share of that time working in the press of Fleet Street. So we will revisit. Maybe we'll even find the old Mucky Duck pub. Was it the Mucky Duck? or am I dangerously close to something I shouldn't be saying? Because that's where they all used to meet up. I think possibly I recorded a few extra moments with Derek, and he did sort of pass reference to those days, which I might play back in the Extra Mile this coming Sunday, but we'll do a proper episode on it in London. So in this part, yes, we revisit football a little. After all, this is my World Cup interview in many respects. But I also want him to share a story that just would not be allowed to happen in these more enlightened times, of Christian the Lion. Because we didn't cover this bit in the piece you're about to hear, I want to share a bit of backstory, which I think will be useful as you're listening to part 2. Christian, the lion, or the cub, was born in Ilfracombe Zoo in Devon in August 1969. Now, that was a zoo that closed in the early 70s. He was part of a litter that had been rejected by their mother. The litter was hand-reared by the zookeepers. But when Christian and his sister were a few months old, I don't know why this happened, but somebody with quite bizarre reason, I might almost attach morals, ethics to that as well, sold them to, of all places, a department store to sell them on. And in this case, this was Harrods, which is, it's a very famous store in London, Harrods. And there used to be this sort of, maybe this fits the remit for taking some cubs on board to sell. But the phrase was you could buy anything in Harrods, wasn't it? Something like that anyway. So you get a lion cub for sale in this famous department store. Imagine that today. No, you can't. It wouldn't happen. Christian is a photo story that Derek took up. Personally, actually, it wasn't commissioned by the newspapers that he was working for at the time. These are different times, of course, but it's a story that ends in Africa, beautifully, I might add. Though I don't want to do too much of a spoiler. There'll be a film on the show page today that you can watch with a coffee and a hanky. So here's my second part of my conversation with my guest today, Derek Catani. Derek, would you say that the victory in the World Cup and the fact that you were on the pitch making pictures and had fallen in love with still photography even more by that stage, despite the fact your father was a photographer as well, would you say that is the defining moment, the 1966 probably was the moment that made you a photographer?
Most definitely. I realised that this was my big moment. I just loved the atmosphere. I loved that anticipation. And being able to photograph as it happened, it was something that was almost inbred in me. I just thought that this was the moment in my life that I've made this big decision. I didn't want to go back to the Football Association in my little office and play with film anymore. I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be on the pitch or at the tennis match or at the big cricket matches and things like that.
But how did that then translate into you finding yourself working on Fleet Street and a variety of stories after that? Because we've been talking about sport, and for another time we'll talk about all the other things that you've done.
Sure.
But you started working in Fleet Street. Now I'm fascinated about Fleet Street. I have this sort of very nostalgic view of it being a sort of smoky, loud room of those that knew exactly what they wanted, and this sort of this energy, this I would imagine very intimidating energy of one of the most famous news streets in the world, Fleet Street.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I was given that opportunity by Johnny Golding, picture editor of the Daily Mail, because I not only got this lovely picture of the boys laughing, I'd also sent him a lot of other pictures. And I think he must have realised that there was a bit of a potential in me capturing that moment and be able to come home with the goods. And so within about 7 or 8 days after the World Cup, I got a phone call from him saying, "Derek, well done. What are you going to do now?" And I went, "Well, I want to be a photographer in Fleet Street." He said, "Well, are you going to leave the Football Association?" So I said, "Well, yeah, I will." And he said, "Well, the day you do that, give me a ring." So I handed my notice in. A couple of weeks later, I got myself into Fleet Street, and there was I in a very nervous position.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
You know, I was still 19 and thinking, crikey, I'm in the big time here. And some of the photographers were very receptive. Others were very hostile because of who is this new thing, new lad trying to steal my moment, steal my feature picture, get a bit better picture than me sort of attitude. But John was very, very good. He said, go out and do this story, that story, and I'd come back and I'd present him with a set of pictures and got them published. The old cliche, you're only as good as your last picture, actually is exactly that. Lots of things kind of fell in place for me when Mick Jagger went up in front of the courts for smoking dope, and he was kindly being let off. there he was in a pub, literally in the old, they used to call it the Mucky Duck, the old Swan pub next to the Daily Mail building. And some guy, one of the reporters, dashed into the picture desk. He said, "Quick, Mick Jagger's downstairs having a pint." And so I was there, camera around my neck, and dashed downstairs and into the Mucky Duck. And sure enough, there was Mick Jagger sitting by the bar having a pint of beer. So I said, "Hello, Mick," and took a quick picture of him, and he was quite bemused by it. But we got on very well. Yeah. And that was my first big front page picture.
Well, you covered such a wide range of stories. I know you were still shooting sport, but equally in this never say no attitude you had to have, certainly at the start of your life on Fleet Street. You had to be available for anything that came your way, I'm sure. But in terms of standout memories of those times where you were jostling to earn your place on the team, are there any others that left an imprint, something you don't easily forget?
I think one in particular that still I remember vividly was I'd done a fairly late shift, and I was awoke by the telephone at about 5:30 in the morning, and it was the early morning picture editor who said, "Derek, you're near Ladbroke Grove, are you?" He said, "Quick, there's been a gangland shooting in so-and-so street. Get down there now." So I literally put my jeans on over my pyjamas, jumped in my little Mini Cooper, dashed down there and ran around the corner to this street, horrible little street in the back of Ladbroke Grove, very dodgy area in those days. And literally I looked in the gutter and there was blood running down the gutter. So I ran up the road and there was this one policeman standing next to this body, and this guy was a gangster. And without going into too much of a gruesome tale, he'd had the back of his head shot off by a shotgun. And within a few minutes, I don't know why I got there so quickly, but I did. And within a few minutes, the whole street was cordoned off. And I ran across the road and hid in some bushes. And I thought, well, something's going to happen here. And about half an hour later, this Black Mariah, as they call it, this big black van, arrived. And these couple of guys got out, and they weren't police. They were undertakers, basically, and opened the back door, and they pulled this coffin out. And they lifted this gangster up between their hands and slowly put him in the coffin. Of course, I took these pictures, dashed back to the Daily Mail, processed the film, and the editor of the Mail came down and said, "These are amazing pictures." And he said, "How did you get them?" I told him the story. And so he said, "We're going to publish this. It's big. It's a big picture story." And we found out that this particular gangster was the head of a very nasty group down in Ladbroke Grove, who used to, run the area. And they published this picture, and the Press Complaints Committee got the Daily Mail out and said, "This picture should never have been published. It's against all sorts of things." And that for me sort of endorsed me making my name for myself, And so it was being at the right place at the right time, and knowing what to do, and don't become too obvious about being a photographer is another important thing.
I want to come around to a softer story, if you like, but a very important story nonetheless. The Three Lions. See, I can pull it round to football. The Three Lions badge worn on the England team jerseys means something to you with regard to another lion, but a single lion that you're known for photographing. This one comes with the name Christian, which is a body of work that you've become associated with. It's a book as well, and we'll learn about that. Tell me about Christian, this lion that you came to know, which sounds odd saying it like that, because it's a story now that probably wouldn't happen. It had an unthinkable start that a lion would be for sale at a shop.
Absolutely. I've been working with the Daily Mail now for some 3 years, and it was in 1970. I was at a big swinging party in Chelsea, and I met these two Australians. And I got chatting to them, and they said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Photographer, da da da." And they said, "Well, we're looking for a photographer to do some pictures for us." And I went, "Well, okay, what's it all about?" They said, "We've just bought a lion from Harrods." And I went, "You're joking, Yeah. But in those days, in the 70s, you could go down Kings Road, Chelsea, and see some glamour model, with a puma on a chain walking down the road. It was almost.
I know. I've seen the extraordinary pictures of
the norm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I said to John Rendell and Ace, well, where are you? And he said, well, we're just down the road, quaintly named a shop called Sophisticat in the World's End in Chelsea. And so I walked in there, and they said, well, the lion's in the back, in his den, in this rather large room at the back.
So it would have been a cub at that stage, would it?
He was a cub. He was like 2 months old then. But
so still reasonably large at 2 months.
Oh yeah, quite a big boy.
There's a big dog size.
Yeah, he was bigger than a fully grown Labrador.
Yeah.
You know, and with very spiky claws and teeth to go with. Now, I don't know why I did it, but I've always enjoyed being with animals, and I have an awful lot of respect for animals. And I didn't go diving into this room and bounce onto him and sort of start stroking him. And I thought, no, this isn't the way to do it. And I've never done that with animals, you know, dogs, cats, horses, whatever. And I sat down in the corner, and John was in the other corner, and Christian was on a great big mat in another part of the room. And I just sat there, and I think Christian might have said to himself, why isn't this guy coming over and petting me and making a nuisance of himself? And I didn't. I just wanted to get to know this animal. And so I stayed with him for maybe, on the first occasion, 15, 20 minutes, and I got up and left. And I said, well, I'll see you again tomorrow, John. And we did exactly the same thing the following day. And about the third day round, I went back into the room again, and there was Christian. I didn't have any cameras, no flash guns, no nothing. And all of a sudden, Christian got up off his mat and walked over, and like a lot of domestic cats do, they kind of headbutt you and say, hi, you know, you're my friend.
Yeah.
And dogs do the same, you know, and they make a big fuss of you. And he came over and did that to me. And John said, oh, he's just recognized you as a friend, and you're now part of his human pride. That's how he put it.
Oh, wow.
So the weeks went on, and I photographed him in all sorts of areas, you know, in the flat. And
yeah, I've seen pictures of him in the back of a soft-top car.
Yeah, that was in the back of John's right. Mercedes.
And there's one of him Christian drinking out of the loo. I mean, he's a huge lion. By then, he's huge.
He's a big boy by then.
Yeah,
he's 5 months, 6 months old.
Yeah,
he's a big boy.
Yeah.
But he was as gentle as I can try and explain to you. He wasn't aggressive. He didn't snarl. Even with new strangers, he didn't look at them in a snarling way, and he was just intrigued by them. And we just got on so well together. I could literally lift him up and place him where I wanted him and take a quick picture. And one of my favorite pictures is of him with his front paws on the big TV we had in the lounge room. And we always called that, you know, Christian on TV. And that's been published all over the place. Yeah. And of course, drinking out of the loo was something quite normal. You know, it was a big bowl of water to him. Yeah. So we had to make sure we flushed it properly.
I should think so. Well, I mean, as you would expect and hope, the lion, Christian the lion, eventually ends up not in this country, but in Africa,
exactly.
which is where you meet the great George Adamson. For anybody not familiar with the name, George Adamson, the great conservationist, you know, a champion of lions and making sure they return to their natural habitat.
Exactly.
And this is what happened to Christian. Did you follow that story?
I did indeed, because I knew Christian so well that I was, as I say, part of his gang. I mean, there was me, there was John Rendell, Ace, who they both owned the line, and there was a couple of other people. There was Jennifer Mary, who was the manager of the shop. There was a lovely cleaner lady, I think her name was Betty, used to sort of push him around with a broom, which he thought was great fun because he used to love biting the broom.
Attack the broom,
the broom pictures. And I think out of all the stories we did together and the pictures we did together in London was a very famous sequence which I did just before Easter. Now, Easter 1970, I just paint a quick picture. All the newspapers used to love having an Easter picture, be a chick with a bunny rabbit, you know, or a dog with a chick on its head or something like that. And Johnny Golding, my picture, just said, Derek, have you got any ideas? And I said, yeah, I think I might have. I said, what about a chick with some chicks with a lion? And he said, look, don't waste my time. If you can come back with a picture of a lion with some chicks, he said, I can guarantee you a publication. So I dashed off and dashed down to Chelsea and said to John, get ready with Christian, and I'm going to dash down to my sisters who owned a farm in Ardingly in Sussex. And I phoned her up and said, have you got any day-old chicks? And she said, yeah, there are loads of them, I said, look, get me a big box. And I dashed down in my little car and picked up this box of chicks. And there was Ace on one side of the table, John on the other side of the table. We planted Christian on the table, and I slowly placed all these chicks in front of him. And he was completely fascinated by them. He didn't swipe at them. He just leant down and smelt and almost licked them. And he was amazingly gentle. And of course, all this time, I was taking pictures. And John and Ace were concentrating on making sure no chicks ate their fate.
Yeah. And they didn't, I assume.
And they didn't. No, it was a success story. And of course, dashing back to the Daily Mail, I said, John, I've got these pictures. And he went, yeah, okay, let me see them. And again, he was absolutely amazed. And I got the centre page spread in the Daily Mail.
It is a book that you can read about and see these amazing pictures in your book, which I will link to on the show page today. Tell me about the release. Tell me about when eventually, of course, you met, as I say, George Adamson, and eventually this story ends with Christian going back into the wild and forming his own lion pride.
Absolutely. We were very fortunate. The stars of Born Free, Virginia McKenna and Bill Travers, just by chance, they had a flat very close to Sophisticat. They literally walked in one day and to buy a piece of pine furniture. And out from the shadows jumped Christian onto the table. And Bill Travers said, my goodness me, what are you going to do with him? And we said, well, to be honest, we don't want to give him to a zoo. Longleat hadn't even started yet. I think they might have had half an elephant and a tiger, but they didn't have any other animals there. We got our heads together, and he said, look, why don't we take him back to Africa? We thought, wow, this could be a great idea. He said, and there was no mobile phones in those days, so he said, look, I'm going to send a telegram to George Adamson, the conservationist, because he was responsible for all the lions that were in the Born Free film. And after Born Free film had been released, etc., he was left with a couple of orphan lions. And so he decided to make up a program to rehabilitate orphan lions back into the wild. So he wanted to create sort of a pride. And so fast forward, we were able to get permission to take Christian back to Africa, courtesy of Nairobi Airways. And so out we were. Christian was in a very comfortable box, which he'd been so used to over the past 3 or 4 months prior to him flying out with us. And so I was obviously part of the team. So I went out there and photographed everything that there was to photograph. And there were some amazing moments when, Christian was shown the wild, and his eyes were bigger than his normal, and he was just looking everywhere. I mean, there was so much going on with elephants and giraffe and baboons jumping up and down, and the odd crocodile swimming up and down the lake. And I had a great opportunity to photograph him from literally dawn till dusk. And I was out there for quite a while with the boys, but the whole object of Christian going out there was to be rehabilitated back into the wild with George Adamson.
And so Christian was released into the wild and made his pride. But it wasn't the end of the story, was it? Because the boys did have further contact, unlikely contact, with Christian, didn't they?
It was about a year later, I think it was 71, late 71, that George had been telegraphing the boys and writing letters saying, Christian is doing very, very well. He's leaving camp more often than not and staying out for days on his own. He said, I can hear him in the distance, mating calls and all that goes with it. And then he'd occasionally come back to camp with his own wild lioness. And so George would say, it was quite a tense moment, but there was no problems there. And so the boys were itching to go back to Africa. And when they got there, George said, Christian hasn't been seen for a few days now, but we can hear him. And I think I know where he is. So the boys went off with George very early in the morning in the direction of where he had heard them. And they stayed at the bottom of this particular mound, this sort of small hill, if you like. And luckily there was a young wildlife film cameraman who had been doing some work there as well. He came along, and then sure enough, Christian showed his head above the top of the mound and looked down, and George was next to Christian and another wild lioness. And George said to Ace and John, shout, call his name. And so they shouted, and that most amazing moment when Christian started walking down the hill.
Yeah, fully grown lion. Yeah.
He was about 50 yards away.
Yeah.
And then he recognized these two boys as his mum and dad, if you like. And then he developed into a gallop, and the boys thought, oh my God, we've got a 500-pound lion running at us. What do we do? Run for cover? But they just stood their ground, and Christian literally just jumped on their shoulders and just licked them and cuddled them, and it was just the most euphoric, amazing moment. And the amazing thing about that moment, and not many people realise it, is that he was with one of his wild lionesses.
Yes.
Now, and this wild lioness was with him all the time, and they allowed the boys to stroke him as well, which is, there must be some amazing telepathy going on between animals saying, this isn't lunch, these are my friends.
These are okay.
You're okay, leave them alone. So that got into YouTube through a young girl in California who was writing up a particular article for her school. I think it was Stanford or University magazine, and decided to publish this sequence of the boys being greeted by Christian again, and it was put to music as well.
Yeah.
It's now had more than 100 million hits worldwide on this particular sequence in many different shapes and forms, So our book, we'd published a couple of early books, one back in 72, I think it's 73, by Collins, but our latest book moves on from not only showing the whole story of Christian, but what it's done, what it's achieved in the world of conservation. George Adamson was the innovator of conservation, basically. And because of Christian's fame, it's just built this amazing following around the world of people wanting to be part of the story.
From Christian the lion back to the three lions, the badge on the shirt of the England football team. From that day, the day that launched your photographic career, that event that meant that you never wanted to return to the Football Association but wanted to become a professional photographer. What do you remember about that day, that event, that time? What's your endearing memory?
The first goal,
right.
Listening to how the fans celebrated in amazement, and because everyone was going, oh, West Germany, they're a pretty good team, aren't they? And and everyone was going, oh, we just got a goal against them. Wow, that's amazing, And that for me was that moment when I thought, we're there, boys. We're going to win this.
And my thanks to Derek Catani today for being our guest as we photo walk along the towpath in Berkshire, making some pictures, reading your letters today and listening to our special guests. For links to Derek and other photographers you've heard from or about today, their Instagrams, the Veros, the websites, some inspirational films, go to today's show page 354 on photowalk.show or follow the link in the podcast player app, because that will take you there as well. That link just there, as I said last week, that one, yeah. I can't believe we're about to stride into the third year of the podcast in 2023. So a big, hearty, genuine thank you for the letters and the pictures that you've sent in, the comments as well that you make on the show pages, because you can make comments when you go to the show pages. It's always lovely I read them all, so to read them back. So thank you for those as well. And do please keep sending them in as we go into 2023, because the photo walk is something that's very dear to me, and I hope that's dear to you as well. And it's really the show is made by you. So do keep sending those letters in. Send them to the email address for the show, which is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. What have you seen there, pups? Hey? It's been a long walk today. Really has. We must have done a good 3 miles today, maybe more, pups. A lot of sniffing, a lot of barking at one stage, I note, and a few pictures made along the way. Our play-out song today is from To the Valley. It's a jaunty one. A jaunty one, Neil. If you just stepped out of a Charles Dickens novel, well, it's almost that time of year. Perhaps I have, yes. It's called Be Bold, Be Brave, and we'll hear that in a moment. And the idea of the play-out song, in case you're reasonably new to these parts, is that we have a song that you can just complete your walk with. I've ended up closer to the railway. Oh, what was that noise? Blimey, that sounded like a bark. It wasn't, it was the end of the train. Oh, there's some points there, I think. Yes, so the idea of the song is that you have something just to accompany you as you make your last few photographs on the photo walk with your camera. So we'll hear from that in a moment. This week's postscript to the show, I hope you don't mind, but I've gone a little off-piste and chosen a quote to accompany the sub-theme today, really, which is football. I saw a few, actually. I wasn't sure what to choose, and I was really trying to shoehorn an appropriate PS from football that would sort of ally itself to making pictures, the feelings that we have when we make pictures. I'm not sure if I've managed that, but this one from Arnold Henry Glasgow. And coming from America land, I appreciate he's talking about the different shaped ball in relation to football. In life, he said, as in football, you won't go far unless you know where the goalposts are. Related, I suppose, to having a plan. I thought, well, that could be a good one. I nearly chose that, but I did think it made us sound a little bit too much like a business show. And, well, to be honest, often the best laid plans seem to be absolute happenstance in picture-making world, don't they? Where the goalposts are firmly hidden in the mists of discovery. There we go, Arnold. One back at you, as they say. And then there was this from the footballing great, the legend, the one and only Pelé. You know you've made it when you're just referred to by one word or one single name, Pelé, who said, and it was wonderful to watch him play football, wasn't it? Oh, genius. Everything is practice. Short and simple, which I think I can relate a lot to in our picture making. Having that sort of unconscious competence, being able to read what's about to happen. I said that to our kids once when they were a bit younger than now, when we were practicing football shots over at the field just across the way. I said, I told them about David Beckham, who took something like, it was a 10,000 rule with Beckham, wasn't it? 10,000. He used to practice free kicks all the time. 10,000 free kicks until he started getting it right. And our Jack turned to me and said, I don't have time for 10,000 kicks, Dad, before Sunday. Point well made. So I almost chose that one from Pelé, because that seemed appropriate. What's the matter, pups? You want to get that duck? Is it duck for lunch? Come this way, come on. Leave them alone. But in the end, I've gone for this as the play-out song plays. You can digest the thoughts from one Gary Lineker, who, in England at least, is a very much revered footballing legend for his time in a white shirt, and club level as well, to be fair. He's a great commentator, a great pundit, a great expert on the game, and we talk a lot about respect. It's getting windy, can you hear that? The wind's really getting up. We talk a lot about respect. Barney, this is not the moment not to show respect. Barney, you've been very vocal today. And I did have to check my facts on this. But notably, Gary never received a yellow or a red card during his 16-year career, which is... I'm not sure that there's many or any other footballers that can claim that. Certainly not many. Surely you'd only be able to count them on one hand. And as a result, he was honoured in 1990 with the FIFA Fair Play Award. In a senior career which spanned 16 years and 567 competitive games, he scored a total of 330 goals, including 282 at club level. He was a phenomenal player to watch, very exciting player. And today I think he's one of the finest ambassadors for the sport, including the fact he wasn't afraid to speak out on BBC telly about the politics surrounding this World Cup. Anyway, come on, Neil. What did Gary say? Enough with the bio. All right. Stand by. This is what he said. Football is a simple game. 22 men chase a ball for 90 minutes. And at the end, the Germans always win.
We're still in the moonlight. It's something sweet. Let it wash over all of me. With you I form my company, forever close to the unknown. There's no doubts and no regret. Happy before we get it. Another day to do it all again. Oh, throwing open all the curtains wide. Oh, not gonna miss a thing. Oh, nothing's promised to you in this life. It's there for us to take. So live well, be bold, be brave. We lay in the daylight under the old oak tree. It's simple, beautiful, it's all we need. Chasing the wonder endlessly. To the unknown. There's no doubts and no regret. Happy before we get it. Another day to do it all again. Oh, we're throwing open all the curtains wide. Oh, not gonna miss a thing. Oh, nothing's promised to you in this life, but it's there for us to take. So live well, be bold. You got till it's gone. Hold it in the sun. All of the best yet to come. Hold it in the sun. Don't know what you got till it's gone. Hold it in the sun. All of the best yet to come. All the curtains wide. Oh.
Bold, Be Brave from a band called To The Valley. And that's it for this week. My thanks to all our guests, Derek Catani, who will return, Bill Ward, who actually also will return, Gareth Ewan-Jones and Imran Nuri, our contributors, you, mpb.com, my other listener, and our extra milers. On Sunday, I'm back with this week's Extra Mile. I may be calling upon an extra story I recorded with Derek, but I'm actually writing the show as I speak to you now. Really, I am actually writing the show. Music today is from the wonderful artlist.io. Final fist bumps go to Neil Ford, head of stuff I simply don't understand, Emily Renier for your eyes in our Facebook group, and Andrea Gilpin, Chief of Staff on the Instagram Vero and Ideas floor. I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.